All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Virtual Public Information Forum for the Gold Butte National Monument Implementation Plan. This implementation plan will guide the future management and protection of Gold Butte National Monument. My name is Ali Amnitsky, and I work for EMPSI and serve as the Public Involvement Coordinator and Resource Specialist for the project. We are a national environmental consulting firm working with the BLM to facilitate this forum and manage the Zoom application. With me today on the call are my coworkers from EMPSI, Teresa Ansell, our project manager, and William Penner, our public outreach specialist. I'll be assisting the BLM today with the facilitation of the forum, the question and answer and response session, and the input session. Before beginning today's presentation, we will briefly review the forum agenda, participation rules, and introduce the BLM specialist assisting with responding to questions. I would like to remind everyone that the forum is being recorded, and you may enable the use of closed captions. To do so, you can click the live transcript button icon on your Zoom toolbar and then select Show Subtitles. To support this public forum, we have created a virtual public forum website. You can access this website at www.virtualpublicmeeting.com/gold-butte-national-monument-EA. And that link is available in the chat window as well. So if you click on that at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, you'll be able to copy and paste that into your web browser. Let's go to slide number 2, please. Great. During today's forum, we will review the forum details, meet the BLM specialist, and provide the project presentation. The presentation will review the planning area and describe the purpose of preparing an implementation plan. Once we have learned more about the planning effort, I'll provide a quick tutorial of our virtual public forum website. We will then move into the question and answer and response session, followed by a public input session. Let's go to slide number 3, please. Great. Your microphone will remain closed until the public input session. If you have an urgent question or need technical assistance, you can enter your message into the chat box now and a technician will contact you. You may also email our technician at teresa.ansell@empsi.com. Let's go to slide number 4, please. If you do not see your Zoom toolbar, you may need to toggle your mouse around or push on your phone screen for it to pop up. Again, we will provide more detailed instructions during the Q&A and input sessions. We do ask that you avoid use of inappropriate language and respect all participants and viewpoints for the duration of this forum. And I would now like to introduce Shauna Duman, the Las Vegas Field Office Manager, to introduce this project and the team. Shauna?
Hi, thank you, Ali, and good evening, and thank you to everyone who's joining our meeting. We're presenting on one of our projects. We are in the early process of gathering information to inform the development of the implementation plan for the Gold Butte National Monument. The purpose of today's forum is to provide you information on what the project is about and how to answer your preliminary questions. We also want to provide you an opportunity to provide oral and written input so that we have the information as we move forward with the plan. The implementation plan is in the earliest stages of development. We have not yet developed the plan or begun the process under the National Environmental Policy Act. We are engaging you early in the process to hear all of your thoughts, input, and concerns to help us develop a better project. We want to hear what you would like to see for actions in the Gold Butte National Monument. For example, whether you would like formal camping areas, designated hiking trails, or defined OHV staging areas. On the bottom of this slide, there is a link for more information regarding the project and access to this presentation. Assisting with this project today and today's forum is Stephanie Clark, the project manager, who will present the project overview and detailed information about the plan. Also assisting with answering your questions tonight are the following people from the Bureau of Land Management: John Asselin, JJ Smith, Steve Leslie, Lee Kirk, Jennifer Dirk, Jimmy Linares, Tyler Warner, and Braden Gard. Let's go to the next slide, please. The implementation plan is being developed to focus management direction outlined in the existing Las Vegas Resource Management Plan for the Gold Butte National Monument, to determine the best method to implement the management directives and determine if changes are needed for the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan to allow for on-the-ground actions to proceed. Developing an implementation plan creates an opportunity for continued collaboration with the public, tribes, and governmental agencies. I am now going to turn it over to Stephanie Clark, the project manager, to give the project presentation. Stephanie?
Thank you, Shauna. My name is Stephanie Clark, and I am the Gold Butte project manager. I'll be providing the project overview. The monument is managed by the Las Vegas Field Office and is located in northeastern Clark County between the city of Mesquite and Lake Mead National Recreation Area. The Gold Butte National Monument, next slide, please. The Gold Butte National Monument was added as a unit of the National Landscape Conservation System by Presidential Proclamation 9559 in December of 2016. It encompasses nearly 300,000 acres of remote and rugged desert landscape in southeastern Nevada and provides popular locations for solitude, outdoor recreation, Native American connections, historical teachings, a backcountry byway through the namesake town, and numerous peaks, canyons, and geologic forms. The area is rich in natural and archaeological resources, historical remnants of early settlers, and contains habitat for the threatened desert tortoise, as well as special status plant and wildlife species. Next slide. The monument contains a variety of resources, including vital plant and wildlife habitat, significant geologic formations, rare fossils, and historic remnants of Western mining and ranching heritage. The monument is also rich with prehistoric sites of Native American heritage. The most popular activities include off-highway vehicle operation, dispersed camping, hiking, horseback riding, and hunting. Visitors tour archaeological and cultural areas, drive the Gold Butte backcountry byway through the historic mining town, observe unique geologic features and picturesque landscapes, or travel to remote wilderness areas to enjoy the solitude of Gold Butte's natural escapes. Over the next few slides, we will discuss the implementation plan, background, and potential focus areas. Next slide. The presidential proclamation directs the Secretary of the Interior to prepare and maintain a management plan for the monument. There are several ways that the BLM could provide land use direction for national monuments. One of those is through an implementation level plan. This implementation plan serves as our management plan. As Shauna stated earlier, the implementation plan is developed to focus management direction outlined in the existing Las Vegas Resource Management Plan for the Gold Butte National Monument. BLM made an initial determination that the land use plan direction in the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan is consistent with the proclamation that established the Gold Butte National Monument. This is because the lands designated as the National Monument have been managed as areas of critical environmental concern under direction in the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan. The BLM is collecting public input now to inform the development of a draft implementation plan for the Gold Butte National Monument and to make a final determination if changes are necessary to the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan in order to allow those implementation level actions to occur. If changes to the Las Vegas Resource Management Plan are determined necessary, they will be addressed through the upcoming Nevada statewide resource management planning effort. The next few slides will look at preliminary issues the BLM is considering for the implementation plan. Next slide. Cultural, historic, and tribal resources. How should these resources be protected, preserved, or restored while still allowing for appropriate public visitation outreach and education efforts. What level of management should the BLM apply to restore and improve historical resources that have been damaged? What management actions are necessary to ensure continuation of tribal activities and traditional use of sacred sites? For example, remove vegetation adjacent to petroglyphs and to protect them from fires. Next slide. Wildlife and special status species. What management actions should be taken to restore, maintain, or enhance priority species and their habitats, including critical habitat for listed species such as the desert tortoise? For example, install water features at or near springs to replenish depleting water supply. Next slide. Vegetation resources. What management actions are essential to maintain and improve vegetation, biological crusts, and native plant communities? Which vegetative treatments should be considered to reduce the spread of exotic or invasive species? For example, plant native species in areas damaged by fires. Next slide. Recreation. How will areas of high visitation be managed to protect resources? How will special recreation permits be managed? Are any facilities such as campgrounds or trails needed for current recreation use? For example, where would restroom facilities be added to protect the resources and improve visitor experience? Next slide. Lands and realty. What management actions are necessary to ensure that water delivery facilities from valid existing water rights can be renewed, operated, maintained, replaced, modified, or upgraded while protecting resources? For example, work with the Virgin Valley Water District to ensure current and future water rights are sufficient to meet the demand. The issues discussed in the previous slides do not include all the potential areas for consideration, nor do the examples given include every example that could possibly be suggested. This is the earliest stage of the development process, and we hope that you will take this very important time to provide us with any questions or input you may have for the future activity of the monument. The beauty, adventure, and culture the land holds are waiting for your ideas. I will now turn it back to Allie.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. I now just want to give everyone a quick overview of the virtual public forum website that we developed to support this project. All right, so this website will be active for the duration of the public information gathering period, which is currently going on through March 3rd, 2022. Again, this link is also available in the Zoom chat window. So if you click on that at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, you can copy and paste the link into your web browser. On this website, you'll find a multitude of information on the background of the project and the monument, why the BLM is asking for input, and how best to provide that input, as well as information on additional public forums. All right, as we scroll down through this page, you'll see the registration links for the public forums. This is our last public forum, so there won't be any additional after this. But there's also links on the information gathering process and why we are conducting that here today. As we scroll through, you'll get to the project background and overview section. This section includes a map of the monument and the surrounding areas. And this can be really helpful if your input is directed at a specific location within the monument. Further down, there's information on the virtual public forum meetings, including directions if you're joining us by phone this evening. And then down here at the bottom of the page is this how to provide public input button. This is going to take you to a page where, again, you'll find additional information on the input process, as well as the different avenues of how to provide your input outside of this forum. So we do have the mailing address for the Las Vegas field office, as well as the email that you can send your input to. Down here at the bottom, we have a forum where you can enter your information, and then a spot where you can actually enter your input, and that will be directly sent to the BLM. Again, this link is going to be available in the chat window, so you can click on that and copy and paste. I also do want to mention that the forum is being recorded, and all of this will be uploaded to the Virtual Public Forum website and YouTube as well. And I'm now going to hand it off to William Penner to take us through the question and answer session with our BLM specialists.
Hi, Allie. Good evening, everyone. My name is William Penner. I'm with EMPSI. And as we switch back and go to the next slide, I'm going to be helping with two components of this information forum this evening. One will be the question and answer portion, and that's going to run to the top of the hour. And then the opportunity to provide verbal input, which will run from 7 to 8. So if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to go ahead and sort of bring everyone up to speed. If you haven't participated with one of these meetings via Zoom, I'll go ahead and let you know sort of how this works. So we're going to go ahead and be using the Q&A icon at the bottom right of the Zoom toolbar for this question and answer session. That's really the key one for the moment. We're asking that everyone use the chat icon only for urgent technical questions. And then later, again, at the top of the hour, we're going to go ahead and use the raise hand feature when we are in the public input session. So when we get there, the mute and unmute during the opportunity for verbal input, that's going to be controlled by the host for the entirety of the forum. And when we do get there, if folks are on the phone, we're going to go ahead and let them know they can use *9 to raise their hand to provide input during the appropriate sessions. And then for technical assistance, you can go ahead and contact Teresa Ansel at the following email. That's teresa.ansel@empsi.com. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to spend some time on this slide for about the next 40 minutes or so. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So again, the Q&A button at the bottom right of your screen, I do see we've actually had questions come in kind of the whole time since the presentation started. I'm excited that people are already doing that. But when you click that Q&A button, basically it's that dialog box you see in the center that comes up. So basically you can type your question at the bottom, you can press enter, and then there's essentially two things that are going to happen. One, BLM may actually choose to read off your question live and answer it live as well, or they may actually go ahead and provide a written answer to your question. And if that's the case, it will go ahead and go into the answered tab rather than the open tab in the Q&A. So a couple of things of guidance. We ask you only submit your question once. There's a lot of folks on the BLM ID team and the moderators. They're going to try it and answer it as quickly as they can, but it may take them a little bit to go ahead and process the question and provide the answer. And again, just to remind you, the chat button is just for the technical issues rather than actually submitting the questions. So with that, Stephanie, I believe you're going to join us again, and it's kind of be you, me, and Allie handing things off back and forth as we go through this process.
Absolutely. Thank you, William.
Sure.
You know, as we wait to answer a few of the incoming questions, I thought that I might talk about what types of input would be the most helpful during this information gathering phase. So the public information forum involves collecting information through maximum outreach efforts. Helpful public input would include potential local concerns, barriers or opportunities related to the implementation plan. For example, input about types of use within the proposed area, or recreational activities and opportunities, and other factors that would be helpful. What kind of facilities you would like to see and where you would like to see those, anything that would enhance the visitor use, recreation side, all of the activities working within this activity planning stage that we're doing. It is really important. And, as we seek that input, just a reminder that the public can provide input throughout this entire time period, not just today, but moving forward to March 3rd is the essential period of time to get your early input into the forum for us. William?
Yeah, Stephanie, we had a number of folks who actually sent in some pre-registered questions. And as we have moments of downtime, as we're waiting for questions to come in and have the ID team and the moderators have an opportunity to respond to them, I'm going to go ahead and just pick and choose from them. One of them that I think is super important is, the question is really, why did the BLM choose to do this virtually? Why didn't they have it in person? Why isn't there a forum in Mesquite or Moapa Valley? Why aren't you out there in the affected communities? And, the Department of Interior, they've received guidance about the number of people that can attend in-person meetings. And that's, obviously due to the pandemic and some of the COVID-19 restrictions. So really the BLM was interested in having effective and maximum participation in these. So that was the option to go ahead and choose this virtual forum. It allows essentially an effectively infinite number of people to go ahead and join if they choose, as opposed to limitations of 50 individuals at a location for the BLM. So that was really the idea. Try and go ahead, make sure they can hear from the most members of the public that they can.
That's exactly true. We do. Your input to us is really important. And I don't think we can express that enough. We want to hear from you. That's why we're here. We are talking here and we are going to answer your questions, but just remember, this is the time that we want to hear from you, most importantly. Allie, do you think we might be ready for a question?
I think so. Yeah, we have a question from participant Christian Gerlach, and they asked, has the Bureau of Land Management hired a tribal liaison officer for the Gold Butte National Monument?
Excellent question. So the BLM will communicate with all Native American tribes with interest in the resources of value within the monument. That's a primary goal of and part of our mission. So outreach efforts are coordinated with each tribe in accordance with guidance they have provided to the tribal liaison. Generally, this consultation consists of coordination between the BLM's authorized officer and the individual tribal governments to identify specific tribal concerns and work with the necessary individuals to address those concerns. These efforts are part of an ongoing relationship between the BLM and each tribal government. Thank you.
Stephanie, on a somewhat related matter, there was actually a question as well that came in about, how will the BLM protect sensitive cultural resources?
Mm-hmm.
The BLM's response is pretty straightforward. They're going to go ahead and address the protection of those sensitive resources really through this planning effort and consider how potential impacts would be analyzed in the environmental assessment and appropriate mitigation measures identified. A couple of these examples might be, particular kinds of trail designations, integrating protection measures, certain types of trail management, and then further public education efforts.
Excellent. That's probably a really good segue into our next question. Allie, we have one waiting for us, right?
We do, yes. This question comes from, it doesn't look like it has a participant name with it, but it is, why was the fence around Devil's Throat moved so far back that you can no longer view the sinkhole?
So this is where it's critical for you guys to provide input about what you want in areas that may help assist in enjoying the resources that are out there when you're enjoying your recreational opportunities. So but specifically for this one, the determination to install the new fence in its current position took into consideration the impacts of the soil erosion that causes the sinkhole and the continued growth in vegetation. So the sinkhole is a large 100-foot natural sinkhole that has been growing from groundwater dissolving the minerals in the soil. And based on BLM observations in the field, there has been a noticeable increase in visitation since the monument proclamation and growth in the size of the opening. So the fence needed to be set back enough to account for the growth and the future soil erosion. Thank you for your question. I think that maybe we could go directly into the next one we have. It's kind of along the same lines when we're talking about amenities.
Right, yeah. So this next question is, will bathrooms or other facilities be constructed or installed?
And the answer to that is installation and or construction of recreation facilities. It may be analyzed to improve visitor use experience and or to minimize visitor use impacts, providing input about types of facilities that would be useful or detrimental within the monument would be helpful information at this time. That's what we want to hear. What do you want? What don't you want to see? What are those accessibility needs you have? The facilities and infrastructure are very, very key to this conversation that we're having right now. And thank you for your question.
You know, Stephanie, that puts me in a mind of another issue that someone asked about improvements. And the question was, you know, will the backcountry byway be paved or repaired or improved? And the BLM's response was that they regularly make repairs to the formerly paved portion of the backcountry byway. And they do this in conjunction with Clark County. They are discussing potential large-scale improvements, and they'll look at that in future planning efforts. There is potential for improving the unpaved portion, but predominantly located in the monument, and that may be analyzed as part of an alternative in this NEPA document.
That is true, and it is ongoing work that we try to do to make sure that the access to the monument is the best possible access that we can have, and meeting the public's and the community's needs for that is important to us. So before we get to the next question on that, I thought I'd address a little bit. We had some questions come in through another avenue on will any wilderness areas be created or designated? And within that, the Gold Butte Monument, National Monument, there are two wilderness areas as well as wilderness study areas. And for informational purposes, wilderness areas are congressionally designated, and the BLM is then mandated to preserve those wilderness characteristics. However, the BLM does not have the authority to create new wilderness. So we'll maintain the ones that we currently have, but unless Congress moves forward and designates any more, we have what we have right now, and we're going to do the best we can by everyone to maintain that in its current form. Allie, do we have another one? Sorry.
We do, yeah, no worries. We do have another question, and that question is, how will the BLM evaluate the health of the rangeland within the National Monument?
Excellent. So the BLM uses the assessment, inventory, and monitoring strategy, AIM, to provide a standardized monitoring strategy for assessing natural resource conditions and trends on BLM public lands. The strategy provides quantitative data and tools to guide and justify policy actions. We also rely heavily on the research community to provide scientific data. Hope that answers your question.
Stephanie, if you don't have another one in the queue, one that I thought was particularly interesting, kind of piggybacking on the question about the roads that I was talking about before, is someone had asked, you know, what did the BLM take into consideration when they were evaluating routes in the planning area? And, you know, the specific route designations in the monument, they consider really the needs for a variety of roads, primitive roads, and trail systems. and they're tailored to various users, and that includes non-motorized. BLM also considers visitor safety and health, user and user conflicts, the types of activities and locations, and also how to mitigate impacts on various cultural and natural resources. These were all developed in the utilized in the development of the 2008 Travel Management Plan, and that includes this planning area. And one key thing, the presidential proclamation for the monument, it codified the existing motorized and mechanized travel network. The only changes that are allowed to the network are when it's in the interest of public safety or to enhance protection of the values or objects, identified within.
Thank you, William. We've had a question about, I just talked about our wilderness areas, and we've had a question about being able to take someone's dog into the wilderness areas. And it's a discussion on recreational amenities added in the wilderness, and also will pets still be allowed in the wilderness. And so as we discussed before, we're mandated to preserve or enhance wilderness character. But where potential recreation amenities will help the BLM with this mandate, they'll definitely be considered. And pets, dogs are allowed in the wilderness areas on leash or within voice command control. So always an important thing to bring our fur babies with us.
Stephanie, I'm going to jump in and remind everyone this is the bottom of the hour. In 30 minutes, we're going to go ahead. We're going to have the opportunity for verbal input from the public. But, just to let everyone know, we still have 30 minutes remaining for the question and answer session. Kind of want to remind everyone as well that the ID team will continue to go ahead and answer your questions, even as we go into the verbal input. So with that, I'll go ahead. Allie, how are we doing? Do we have anything in the queue?
We do, yeah. We have a question from Mitchell Fry, and they asked, has the BLM considered adding a dark sky designation and dark sky certification for the Gold Butte National Monument into this implementation plan?
Mitchell, excuse me. The BLM has been looking into this designation and has been contacted by the National Park Service about certifying Gold Butte as a dark sky park. And at this point, that's all we have on that. But your input on moving forward with that is definitely warranted here. Thank you. And do we have another one ready?
We do, yes. This next question comes from Ed Price, and they asked, you almost have a clean slate for planning visitor experiences. What considerations are included for inclusion of visitors with disabilities to have the same experience as others in the area of hiking?
A very important question. We have a lot of visitors and community members that have different needs when it comes to accessibility. And while planning for an activity plan such as this, any facilities that are proposed for future installation within the monument would consider accessibility. And the BLM is committed to providing the highest level of accessibility, feasible and consistent with our mandate of multiple use management. So it's important to you, it's important to us. And thank you very much for your question. William?
Yeah, so I've got two questions. They really are paired. And I think a lot of people who look over at Red Rock are the ones who are probably asking some of these questions. And that's fees and reservations. So I'll take on reservations first. And the question is the BLM going to require reservations to use the area, to use the monument, similar like they have at Red Rock on the scenic drive? And, the implementation of a reservation system, it could be implemented at select sites if or when there's high enough visitor use to ensure or try to ensure the protection of the resources or minimize user conflicts. If there are sites like this that are identified, it may be considered during this planning process. And kind of the twin to that is the question about fees. Is the BLM going to go ahead and implement a fee station, use permits, other kinds of use fees? And that's not the intent of the BLM at this time. There's no intention to go ahead and implement collection of amenity fees or fees for access to recreation areas within the monument. But that may actually come up during this early input, and it may be something that people will ask the BLM to look at, and that could be actually evaluated during the planning process. So that's why these forums and the public providing their input is so critical. So that allows the BLM to understand and better think about ways in which they can complete visitor management.
Excellent point on that, William. Of specific importance to a lot of people out there, since we are talking about an activity planning effort here, is will we open or close areas while we're moving forward with this? And so considerations for opening or closing activities in an area would be analyzed through planning documents with the input from the public stakeholders, cooperating agencies, and tribal governments. And that's where we need everyone's input to come in and talk to us about whether or not these areas are being managed the way that you vision. So that's just a little note on that. Allie, what do we have in the queue?
We do have another question ready. This question comes from Kevin Brown, and they asked, Stephanie, you briefly touched on the Virgin Valley Water District, Springs, and water rights issue in your presentation. Thank you. My question is, how do you see the Memorandum of Understanding between the Bureau of Land Management and the Virgin Valley Water District in December 2018 regarding the Virgin Valley Water District's water rights and future development of those rights being incorporated into the monument plan?
Well, Kevin, you're welcome. And thank you for your question. It's an important one. The BLM will continue to work with the Virgin Valley Water District in accordance with the established MOU. We look forward to any additional input you might have for the implementation plan. You might have for the implementation plan regarding Virgin Valley Water District's water rights. It is important that you share your thoughts and your concerns with the BLM so that we may be informed as we move forward with this implementation planning process. So again, what's important to you is what's important to us at this point. And so if you have further comment on that, please, reach out to us and let us know. And it might be a good opportunity for me to remind people, as William has already, that there's multiple ways to reach out and provide your input to us. There is the website, obviously today through this comment period, the question and answer, and then the input period here in a little bit, which is being recorded. But we also have the website and the email address that has been provided to you. And this initial portion of the planning for this is public information. This is the best and most important opportune time for you to get your input into us. And that goes up until March 3rd. You can provide input afterward, but this goes to this pre-planning phase that we're into right now.
Stephanie, I like where you're going with that. And I want to just touch base on one thing as well. For all of us who are here and participating, we have some really great questions coming in. There's always that feeling once you've left an event and you think, oh, I should have asked that question. If only I had thought about it during that time. Or you're reading other people's questions and answers, and that spurs you to think, later, I really want to ask that. You're not out of time. Basically, you can go ahead, you can actually ask that question during the verbal input period at the top of the hour. And further, you can also go ahead and send an email to the BLM's project-specific email for this. And I'm going to say it out, but we'll show it again on the screen later. It's BLM_NV_LVFO_Gold Butte@blm.gov. And really that way, the BLM and this entire early planning process can actually benefit from the question that you thought up later. So we encourage everyone to go ahead, continue with those questions. And then also, as Stephanie noted, you can also provide input as well. And we'll go ahead and talk about that multiple times throughout the remainder. So with that, we got about 20 minutes left. And Allie, how are we doing?
We do have another question ready to go. This question comes from Christian, and they asked, I would like to see additional law enforcement resources out in the monument to steward and guard the cultural resources in the monument. How can we get a dedicated full-time team of Bureau of Land Management rangers, law enforcement, biologists, and archaeologists to safeguard the biological, natural, cultural, and archaeological resources?
Christian, your concern is our concern. We're here for the protection of the resources as well. We find it to be the most one of the most important things we have out there, as well as the protection of our visitors as they visit. As part of the implementation plan, the BLM anticipates including more specific management strategies related to public safety and enforcement to better protect the resources and the visiting public that are out there. Your input, again, I probably can't say this enough, on how you would like to see that is critical during this stage. So protection of visitors and resources is critical. So thank you for your question. It's important. I do see that, if I may, there was a question that was asked about OHVs and desert tortoises being compatible, and I'd just like to address that out loud, if I may. The BLM would address the protection of sensitive resources through this planning effort. Potential impacts would be analyzed during the environmental assessment portion, and appropriate mitigations would be identified. So these may include trail designations, limiting development, restoration of impact areas, and public education efforts. So really, that's what this process as we move forward is to determine how we can manage the multi-use facets of the BLM monument area, the Gold Butte National Monument area, to make sure that they are compatible and we can work them together. So thank you for your question. What do we have next, Allie?
We've got another question. This one lines up really well with what we've been talking about recently. So this question comes from Rick Karsich, and they asked, besides the public forums like this one, what other input activities besides mailing in comments will the BLM pursue in order to elicit public input?
Well, written questions may be presented during the Q&A portion of this forum. That's what we're doing now. Verbal comments can be presented during the public input portion, period following this session. And any additional comments or questions you may have, because we all know we get done with these types of forums or meetings, situations, and you go, oh, I meant to ask that. You still have that opportunity. So those can be provided following this form by mail or email. We do take snail mail, just like old school, and that can be mailed over to the Las Vegas field office. Attention, the implementation plan manager at 4701 North Torrey Pines Drive, Las Vegas, Nevada 89130. That I said that really fast, but that information is available on the website. And here, and then obviously William just provided that email address, and we get all of that email and it is checked regularly. So please feel free to reach out to us. Make sure it's by March 3rd for this initial phase. Thank you.
And Stephanie, our kind team members have also provided the email and the mailing address in the chat. So very easy to go ahead and look at it. You don't need to try and remember what letters we were trying to spout off. So, Stephanie, as you go ahead and wait and we get ready for Allie to have more things in the queue, There was one thing that was an interesting question that, in all honesty, I hadn't noticed before. So I'm going to go ahead and read it because I'm interested in it. And the question was, will the monument be open to solar and wind development? And then if not, why? And the answer is no. Basically, except for as necessary for the care and management of the monument objects, there will not be any new rights of way. And that includes solar or wind development that will be authorized within the monument. So there you go. I didn't know that, but now I know.
Now you know. Here's another good question. Is there a plan for expansion in the future? Because, you know, we all like to grow out farther, but just so we all know, there is no plan to expand the monument. Gold Butte National Monument's boundaries were established through the presidential proclamation, and any changes to the boundaries of that would have to be made by requires changes through legislative means. So there you have it. No solar, and at least for the foreseeable future, no expansion of the boundaries. Let's see, where are we at? How about camping? Let's talk about camping, because really it's an activity plan that we're working on here, and we want to talk about activities like camping that'll be allowed. What's going to be allowed? Specific recreational activities, camping, those are all things that we need your input on, because that's what's going to be analyzed through this process. All those things I spoke of earlier about what are the favorite or most used activities, most completed activities in there: hunting, horseback riding, hiking, and enjoying the resources. Those are the things that we need to discuss, we need the input on, so that we can analyze everything during the development of the implementation plan. And it's important to provide that information on your specific interests, because no one else is going to talk about your interests. So please make sure you get that information into us. What do we have, Allie?
We've got another question. And this one says, has there been any discussion on development or construction of a visitor's center located in or near the monument?
Not by me specifically. I'm just kidding. So no discussion has occurred so far, but if that's something you're inclined to see out there in the future, that's something you need to tell us about. So providing this input about the types of facilities, as we spoke on before: bathrooms, visitor centers, kiosks, those kind of things, camping areas, picnic areas, day use areas. Those are all the things that we need to know about, and they'll be useful as we move forward, sooner than later. Thank you for your question.
Stephanie, I'm going to jump in to remind everyone we have just about 10 minutes remaining in this question and answer session. And again, as we've said multiple times, folks could continue to go ahead and type in questions using the Q&A button. And the ID team will continue to answer them basically for the duration of this forum. And then once we get to the top of the hour, we're going to go ahead and switch over. We'll have a little bit of housekeeping and explain to people how they can provide verbal input. And then we'll basically go into a session where we won't be asking questions, but everyone will have some allotted time to go ahead and provide verbal input. So again, you've got about 10 minutes remaining. If you would like a question answered live, I'd suggest go ahead and try and get it in now.
William, have we, I recall you talking a little bit about codifying the travel plan. Did we talk about that already?
We did, actually.
Okay.
And, you know, it was at the very, very end of the discussion of OHV use, but there's one that I actually missed. And let me see if I can't find it, because it's kind of interesting.
All right. Is that the one on the roadways?
Well, I guess, you know, that maybe this is what you're actually looking at. So the question that I have, I mean, I didn't touch on, I touched on one that's sort of very close to it, is have all the routes actually been designated, or excuse me, documented in the planning area? And so the answer really is, as we discussed before, there was a travel management plan that was developed and implemented in 2008. That travel management plan, it included an inventory of all the routes within what is now known as Gold Butte National Monument. That includes about 372 miles of routes that were designated as open through that plan. And since the BLM actually implemented that travel management plan, they also have been continuously conducting restoration treatments of routes designated as closed, as well as user-created, new route incursions.
Awesome. Thanks for touching on that a little bit more, William. Allie, do we have another question we can go for?
We do, yeah. And this question is tied to an earlier one, the one that we discussed about law enforcement and multiple ologists. So this question asks, following up with having more law enforcement and ologists dedicated to the area, can the BLM ask for additional funding to support the monument?
Excellent question, Rhett. And I shorten that from ologist to just ists. It saves you a little bit of time on there, but I appreciate the comment, and I'm sure all the ologists do as well. The BLM will continue to work on funding solutions for the management needs of the monument, and those come through various avenues. It's important that we continue to work on it, and so that we can get all the resources taken care of that are needed out there for the activities and public protection, public safety and resource protection. So thank you for your follow-up question, Rhea.
Stephanie, one question that actually someone had asked from the public, and everybody loves sort of the charismatic big animals. How's this implementation plan going to affect Bighorn sheep? So the implementation plan is going to ensure the protection, maintenance, and improvement of the habitat of the Bighorn sheep in a couple different ways. Going to maintain existing water developments, construct additional water developments, and protect and improve springs, seeps, and riparian habitat. The BLM is going to go ahead and ensure that all these actions are consistent with the goals and objectives of the range-wide plan for managing desert bighorn sheep. It's a bigger overarching document.
I like the bighorn sheep. I like them all of the wildlife, but the bighorn are exceptionally beautiful. Allie, do we have another question ready?
We do, yeah. This question is, will hunting be allowed?
Hunting. Hunting will continue to be allowed within the monument in accordance with the Nevada Department of Wildlife. If you're not aware, the hunting regulations for the state of Nevada are managed by them, and we work in conjunction with them to ensure that that activity is available throughout the monument. So I hope that answers the question. Let's see.
Stephanie, unless you've got one in the queue, I had an interesting one here that came in from Richard Spots, and I'm going to go ahead and try and copy it over so it doesn't disappear from me. And I'm going to get it in a second. It's a question about the difference between the monuments plan and a monument implementation plan, sort of the management plan and implementation plan. So moderators came back with this answer. There's several ways the BLM can provide land use direction for national monuments. One of those is through an implementation level plan. So the BLM is now collecting that public input. It's part of what we're doing here to inform the development of that draft implementation level plan. Then they're also going to look at it and see, are changes needed to the Las Vegas resource management plan? So that overarching resource management plan, in order to allow implementation level actions to occur. And if indeed there are changes that are necessary to that Las Vegas resource management plan, they may be addressed through the upcoming Nevada statewide resource management planning effort. That one's for the NEPA geeks out there.
Always important to cover all of our bases there. Let's see. What else do we have?
We do have another question in the queue. If you're ready for that, Stephanie.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. This question is, again, hunting related, and it asks, is hunting restricted in time and space within the monument? I am wondering how that is managed with visitors.
Oh, you know, I wish I had a more intricate answer for you as to how the Department of Wildlife works on those determinations with us. But at this time, all I can truly say is go back to my earlier answer, which is that hunters need to comply with requirements of the Department of Wildlife. And then additionally, access would need to remain on the designated roads and trails within the monument. The specifics about the timing of the hunting periods and things of that would be referred over to the Department of Wildlife, the Nevada Department of Wildlife, for those things. Thank you for your question, though.
Stephanie, we've got about 4 minutes before we go ahead and shift over to the verbal input. And I wanted to go ahead and maybe we've gotten down to some very detailed information about resources, kind of zoom back up a little bit and sort of go back a little bit to the presentation with this question. What are some of the goals that are going to be analyzed during this process? And BLM's answer was to improve the recreation experience and setting at the monument while protecting the area's natural and cultural resources. And the preliminary areas of focus include, but aren't limited to, your input for the public. It can actually help inform this: cultural resources, tribal resources, wildlife and special status species, vegetation resources, recreation, and lands and realty.
Well, now that I'm unmuted, I'm going to go a little simpler than you just went. Those are all important, and but this might be a question that a lot of people would like to hear out loud. It was answered in the typed answers. But what oil and gas leases currently exist within the National Monument? And I'm taking a cheat here, and it's just a simple answer: there are no oil and gas leases within the monument. So I went simple on you, William. And actually, let me just piggyback on there. There also, how about we, let's see. Let's talk about, since we were talking about resources, how about paleontological resources found in any area? Do you like that?
Yeah, that's good.
Big words from a little person. The geologic units of Gold Butte are known to contain a moderate to high occurrences of paleontological resources. Significant resources have been documented, but they vary in occurrence and predictability. Rare or uncommon fossils, including non-vertebrate or unusual plant fossils, may be present. So I think that's a true treasure of the monument. And to piggyback on that note right there, how what facilities, what things, what infrastructure, how do you as a public want to see those things protected or made accessible within the confines of the management directive here? So help us help you, give us that input.
I think the fossils are going to have the last word on that, because we have come to the top of the hour. So with that, just want to express our appreciation. At this point, we're almost 65 questions answered, another 10 open. Encourage everyone to go ahead and keep asking those questions even through the next hour. And the ID team is, they're not going to sleep yet. They're going to go ahead and keep answering them. But with that, Allie, do you mind going ahead and let's go forward in the PowerPoint to slide 19. Excellent. Okay, so now we're at the stage where we're asking the public to go ahead and provide verbal input. But when folks went ahead and registered for this meeting, they had the opportunity to indicate that they would like to provide input. So we're going to go ahead and go to those folks first. We're going to accept their input first and ask them. You'll see there's a list on the next slide. And once your name is called, we're going to ask you to use the raised hand feature. It's at the bottom right of your Zoom toolbar. And then we'll go ahead, we'll open your microphone, we'll ask you to unmute, and then you'll be able to go ahead and provide your input. And then at the end of the time allotted for your input, we'll go ahead and close your microphone. If you're on the phone, you can go ahead, you can raise your hand with *9. As you'll see in the next slide, there will be a timer, or I guess one slide after that, to show the time remaining for your input. And this input's actually going to be included in the project record. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So here we are. This is the slide where we're going to basically remain for the next about 55 minutes. And this is really key. There's some important ground rules. So probably the most key one is we want to hear from everyone who is here and wants to provide input. So in order to do that, and out of respect for everyone's participation that we'd like, we want to use certain guidelines. Please stay within your allotted time. That allows time for everyone to go ahead and be able to provide input. Another key one, please be respectful of others. We don't want any personal attacks on other members of the public. Refrain from profanity. And if you're not following these guidelines, I'm going to go ahead, cut your microphone, and we're going to move on to the next participant. And that will be it for that individual. So one thing I will say, a lot of folks, they may be uncomfortable. They may decide, maybe I don't want to provide verbal input here. I still want to provide input. As we've mentioned it several times, please visit the project website for more information. That's virtualpublicmeeting.com/gold-butte-national-monument-EA. And also in the chat, we have provided the email there and the mail, and those are the two other forms of comment. So with that, as we go through, we're going to go through all the people who have already registered to provide input. And then once we're done with them, we're going to open it up to folks who are here, but maybe did not indicate they wanted to provide input. And then at the end, if there's sufficient time, we'll open it back up to anyone. So individuals who may like to go ahead and have more time than the initial 2 minutes allotted to them, we can actually circle back. Or sometimes, certain things are jogged by listening to other people's input. So with that, the first thing I'm going to do is the first individual on the list, Ryan Bundy. Ryan, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Raise hand features in the lower right of your Zoom toolbar. I'm not seeing Ryan raising their hand. If I call your name and you just couldn't find that raise hand feature, we will come back to you. You'll get a priority to go back to the top. So I'd like to go ahead and then go next to Christian Gerlach. Christian, would you raise your hand if you're here? Hi, Christian. We're going to go ahead and ask you to unmute your microphone, and then you'll be live and you can provide some input. Good evening.
Hello and good evening, Bureau of Land Management officials. I first want to take a moment to thank you so much for hosting these meetings. It takes a lot to host public meetings, and it really behooves our public lands to have as much robust public input on their management. I would urge the Bureau of Land Management to please consider hosting additional meetings in addition to the 2 meetings that are being hosted, tonight's meeting and the previous meeting, and even consider perhaps other language opportunities for folks to feel a little bit more comfortable to provide public comment. There in the Mesquite area, closest to the monument, there is a robust Spanish-speaking population that should be engaged by the Bureau of Land Management and public outreach efforts. A lot of families from that community do use the monument and enjoy it regularly, and I would urge the Bureau of Land Management to consider that sort of outreach. I also would like to thank the Bureau of Land Management for the management it's done thus far, but would urge the Bureau of Land Management to do more strict outreach and engagement with Indigenous communities, especially like the Moapa, Las Vegas Band, Kaibab Band, and Shivwits Band of Paiutes, as well as even the Chemehuevi, all of whom have significant cultural ties to the Gold Butte area. I would hope that the Bureau of Land Management also consider having one or more nationally registered and listed traditional cultural property or archaeological districts that are inclusive of the red rock sandstone formations in Mudwash, Paiute, that house those Paiute artifacts, petroglyphs, and rock stories. And again, I just want to thank the Bureau of Land Management for hosting these meetings, and have a lot more to say, but I'll email you more of those comments. But again, thank you for hosting these, and please consider hosting more meetings so that more members of the public can participate in them. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Christian, for kicking us off with your input. The next individual who is up is Paul Fleming. Paul, are you here, and can you raise your hand? Again, it's on the toolbar for Zoom. I don't see Paul here. Adam Bronstein. Adam, are you here? Can you raise your hand? Hi, Adam. We're going to go ahead and ask you to unmute, and then you'll be live.
Yeah, I got a chance to speak on Tuesday, so I am all set. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here again. Next up is Don Davis. Don, are you here this evening? I don't see you in the attendee list, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to Jack Colwell. Jack, are you here, and you want to go ahead and raise your hand? Okay. Again, reminding anyone, if I call you and you see you're up here and you were registered, you can raise your hand at any time. If I passed by you and you just happen to have stepped out to go to the bathroom, say Ryan Bundy in this case, or Jack Colwell, or even Don Davis, if they join later, we can go ahead. There will be opportunities. So with that, Josh Wilson. Josh, are you here? Hi, Josh. We'll go ahead and ask you to unmute.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Josh.
What do we do tonight, Phil?
It's another lovely evening. Welcome back.
Glad to hear it. I thought of a few things that I forgot to bring up yesterday. Now that I see how the 2-minute little rule works, I can try to get back on point. I know I'm burning time now, but at first I'm gonna touch back again on genetic engineering in our public lands. I was shown the BLMs. Darn it, I don't have my notes on here because your thing takes all my stuff. The BLM has a national seed strategy, and I believe it's under BLM's wing. If that's the case, I'd really like to know. They don't have any contact. It's under BLM's website, but I can't get a hold of anybody from the webpage. So I really need to investigate that. The reason, as other people might be listening, and why I'm just rambling, is because I'm 100% certain that genetic engineering is heading towards our public lands in the name of restoration. They're going to patent right now in the APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Services, they have deregulated stacked traits. A trait is something that you can insert into the genome of a plant or an animal, and you're able to give it a trait, like a mechanical trait, like maybe they claim drought resistant. And these kind of things are going to be deregulated and unsupervised. And some of BLM's cooperating agencies, their strategic plans on their website will almost they'll almost say it. You know, they'll say innovation, and they'll say we're using best known science. But the truth is, it's genetically edited stacked traits that they have patents on. And they're going to use lease agreements for restoration purposes. And I'm certain I'll be back if I have more time. Thanks, Phil. Back to you.
Thanks. Kevin Brown, you are the next individual up. Are you here this evening? I don't, oh, there we are, Kevin. And you're live. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate the BLM hosting this public input session. And my question was answered during the write-in portion of it. So I appreciate Stephanie's answer. And we look forward to working with the BLM on implementation plan and our water resources and everything like that. So I'll let the other people that have comments or anything else chime in at this point. But thank you.
Thank you too, Kevin. Thanks for being here this evening. So next up, Mark Rollins. Mark, are you here this evening? And can you raise your hand? Mark the raise hand features at the lower right. Okay, I'll go ahead and go on to the 10th individual pre-registered, Meredith Taylor. Meredith, are you here this evening? I don't see you in our list. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Teresa swap out for the next group of pre-registered folks and just remind everyone, we're going to go ahead, provide opportunities for verbal input, basically up until about 5 minutes before the end of the evening, when we're going to do a little bit of reminders of the other ways to provide input. And then also go ahead and have Shauna give us a good evening and a goodbye. So with that, it looks like Mark Rollins and Meredith Taylor were folks who we just were looking for. So I think we're up on Pamela True. Pamela, are you here this evening? Hi, Pamela. We're going to ask you to unmute your microphone and then you're going to be live.
Can you hear me?
I can. Good evening.
Good evening. So I was trying to get an answer to a couple of questions in the chat, but I'm going to ask this here. Why is it that discussion of livestock grazing and trespass grazing is not suitable for this conversation when we can talk about every other use?
So Pamela, I'm not sure if you're expecting me to answer that question, but as I said at the top of the hour, this is an opportunity for input. This isn't an opportunity for a question and answer back and forth dialogue. So if you'd like to go ahead and submit that question actually via the email or via the mailing address, and we'll look at those later, we certainly can do that, but you've got time remaining if you'd like to provide more verbal input. Okay, Pamela, it looks like you're back on mute, but I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead. I am 100% certain we'll have more time. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me
Go
now?
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You have time.
Again, you know, I'm a citizen of this country. I have a right to ask a legitimate question and get an answer, or get an answer to why you won't answer it. Why is it that we cannot discuss livestock grazing in respect to the monument when we can discuss every other use?
Pamela, I'm gonna be a bit of a broken record on this and go ahead and note that this is an opportunity for verbal input. It's not a question and answer session. So I apologize. You're going to get the same answer if you're going to ask that question again. So maybe we can go ahead and we'll have an opportunity to go back to you in a little bit. Let's go on to Richard Spots. Richard, are you here and can you raise your hand? I had seen his name in some of the questions and answers. And just scroll down. I don't see him here now. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for Rayette Martin. Rayette, oh, there you are. Hi, we're going to ask you to unmute your microphone. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for allowing verbal public comment. I just want to emphasize the importance of having educational signage throughout the monument, including the staging area that's set up kind of over by Whitney Pockets. I'd like to see sign improvements. That's a great location for those toilets, dumpsters, and that kind of facility. Having the pavement to that point, I think since it has such an issue, would be great to have it to that point, but to leave the rest, dirt. When it comes to signage, I'd really like to see emphasis on responsible recreation, especially those at known cultural sites. We'd like to keep them secret, but we know everybody is visiting them. And along those lines, to incorporate the tribal voice in that signage, to also maybe have 3D models and that kind of tactile experience for visitors who have different abilities to get out to the sites themselves or vision impaired, that kind of thing. Also to ask in the signage for people to report damage and be citizen stewards of the land. I would also like to see an increase in law enforcement, not necessarily to be issuing tickets, but to have a voice for the laws and ethics, and just to have a presence there so people can ask questions, and know that these places are being supervised, and additional support for the Nevada Site Stewardship Program and the archaeologists that work within the monument to maintain all of these cultural sites.
Beautiful timing, came in just under 2 minutes, and just some great input. Thank you for your participation. And with that, I think probably everyone can see we've come to the end of the list for folks who, whoops, there we go, are going to be pre-registered. So I'm not going to just encourage everyone. I'm opening it up. I see we have 35 attendees here. Some of them didn't pre-register. If you want to raise your hand, just go ahead and do it. At that point, basically, whoever's raised their hand but hasn't an opportunity to provide input yet, I encourage you to do so now. We'll go ahead and wait for about a minute to do that. And in the meantime, just remind folks, if you maybe don't feel comfortable in this kind of venue, but you do want to provide more input, you can visit the project website for more information on how to do that. Again, it's that information at the bottom of your screen. And then also later at the top of the hour, when we go ahead and close out this forum, we're going to go ahead and actually give you the email address as well as the mailing address to do that. Looks like we have Catherine. She has raised her hand. And Catherine, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
I absolutely can. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. And several of my questions were answered, but I would like to just reemphasize what the woman who just spoke before mentioned. Several things. The signage situation, I think really needs to be improved in the area. Information that would help people abide by the rules and to understand the protection of the resources. I would also like to see the management plan address the enforcement side. And the resources that are required, and even the process that the citizens who observe improper usage of the facility out there can report and help monitor the area for the BLM. I also would like to see the BLM create a more active site steward program for the Gold Butte area, one that's specifically designed for the area. It is a very remote area, and I think it would be helpful to have site stewards that are monitoring some of the fragile areas, the areas of the petroglyphs, etc., so that we can ensure that our resources are being protected appropriately. So I've been hiking out there for well over 10 to 12 years, and I've seen as the traffic grows, I've seen a lot of abuse of the lands, additional roads, etc., off roads being done, and just would like to see the area being maintained as best that we can. So thank you very much, and I appreciate this input.
Thank you for participation. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and open it up to anyone, even if you've already provided input. Go ahead and raise your hand at this time. Looks like we have Joanne, who has not provided input, so that's great. Joanne, we're going to go ahead. We're going to ask you to unmute your microphone, and then we'll be happy to hear from you. Hi, Joanne. It's unmuted, but I'm not hearing you, Joanne. Joanne, I'm not sure whether there's an additional technical difficulty on your end. I will go ahead and reiterate. We'll put it in the chat right now that you can email Teresa Ansel for help with technical issues. So if you want to go ahead and do that, we'll put that in the chat, and then maybe she can try and help you with any of the issues you may be experiencing with why we can't hear you. So I will go ahead. Thank you, Teresa. Just put it in the chat right now. She should be able to solve that. Anyone else is more than welcome to go ahead, even if you've already provided input, or also for people who were pre-registered and maybe didn't hear their name and didn't provide input yet, go ahead and encourage everyone to raise their hands. Joanne, you're back up. We're going to ask you to unmute this time. Maybe we have better luck this time. Good evening. Oh, Joanne, I'm not hearing anything still.
Joanne, excuse me. Joanne, you may have to make sure that your computer has a microphone, or that you're not muted if you're on your telephone or tablet. Make sure that that is not have an additional mute button on it. So if you're on your phone, you can hit the unmute button on the device itself.
Thank you, Teresa. So maybe, Joanne, we're going to go ahead. I'll encourage other folks to go ahead and raise their hands, provide input. Again, we're going to be here basically until the top of the hour. But we're going to have just a little bit of time at the end to go ahead and remind everyone other ways to provide input. And then also have some goodbyes from Shauna. So with that, anyone can go ahead and raise their hand and provide input. But in the meantime, as we're waiting for that, I'm actually just going to go ahead. I'll ask to go to the next slide. And just a little bit of housekeeping about the other ways to provide further input. Again, we said it several times already. More information available at the project website. You can see the URL there. Another thing, you can provide input by emailing that email address there, the one project-specific one for this particular undertaking. You can mail, the BLM Las Vegas field office and go ahead and, have that attention line. One key thing, this input should be received by March 3rd, 2022, in order to be able to be included in sort of this early planning effort. So with that, we can actually go back to the previous screen. Excellent. And I will go ahead and I will wait for a moment for people to go ahead and raise their hands. And I'm going to go ahead and take a drink. So I will go on mute. Thanks. Excellent. We've got 3 people in the queue here. Josh, it looks like you're up first. We're going to go ahead. We're going to ask you to unmute, and then you'll have some time to speak. Welcome back.
Right. Okay. Thanks for having me, Phil. I'm gonna talk a few more times about genetic engineering in our public lands. I think it's really interesting to note that Harry Reid had brought a Zika bill. Remember when Zika was going to kill the world? He brought a Zika virus bill to the Congress floor for $1.7 billion. Not a lot of money, but it all went directly to GE Innovation and directly funded USDA APHIS WS. That money was used to genetically engineer mosquitoes in Brazil. Look it up. They have issues now where even the government's saying, you know, this genetic marker that you put in the mosquito that was supposed to kill the other mosquitoes and then die, it didn't work. They're meeting. It's a real thing. Look it up. But here, I'll get to some suggestions that you should look into. Federal agencies, cooperative agencies alone should not measure the possible impacts of the applied genetic engineering processes or treatments. It'll say in APHIS WS in their mission statement, our actions are to mitigate damage caused by wildlife. Our actions to mitigate damage caused by wildlife are scientifically based, biologically sound, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible. Well, I say if they're socially responsible, let's put the information together and let the people decide if this is the kind of treatment that their public land should have. That's one of them. Let's get that.
Josh, I'm going to bet you're going to have
Over
more
there.
time, but you're coming up on the end of your time here.
No worries. Thanks, Phil.
Yep, we'll meet again, I'm sure. So with that, Pamela True. Pamela, you're up next. Hi, Pamela. You're
Hi there
live.
again.
Good evening.
I keep getting cut off. So I guess I'm not supposed to ask a question, but I didn't. It did get answered in the chat box. Anyway, you guys have stated that you will not be changing or addressing livestock on this monument. So that means that I can't comment anywhere on that if you're not going to be looking at that. I just want to know where I can comment on it if you're not going to be addressing it.
So your input's being taken down right now as part of this. You can go ahead and submit it in a written format in the other two ways, and then it will be considered. So this is actually part of that process. You could actually ask a question as well at that email or through that actual mailing address. It's just that this particular portion is dedicated to try and hear the input from the public.
Well, this is input from the public, but that's what I mean. You'll look at every other use except livestock grazing, and I don't get it. All right, I will go to the email then. That's all I can do.
Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you.
So with that, Rayette Martin, you are up next. Rayette, we're going to ask you to unmute and welcome back.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me again?
I absolutely can.
Awesome. So I went really fast last time. I think it would be nice to maximize the BLM's involvement in the area if they were to be able to formally partner with other groups. I mean, they already do, but in their planning, it would be nice to see them partnering with the Friends of Gold Butte, the Nevada Site Stewardship Program, Nevadans for Cultural Preservation, and any other entities that can help support their management of the resources. The ones I listed, a lot of them have to do with cultural resources. But also I am an off-road enthusiast. I enjoy the long drives in the dirt, and I encourage that to still be a major part of the monument. I would not like to see the roads be paved other than to the access area or staging area. Maybe just get people into the park or the monument a little bit so that they can see the red rock formations and some petroglyphs and that kind of thing. But to leave the rest of it kind of how it is with, you know, only necessary maintenance, you know, to make sure nobody's getting washed out and that kind of thing. I'd also like to maintain the area's access for OHV users. But again, I can't stress enough the importance of education, and to approach education from the perspective that you're talking to somebody who doesn't know any of the laws, doesn't have a background or any formal training in ethics, and to warn people of the cattle on the roadways just so that they're not getting into severe accidents.
All right. Thanks, Rayette, for providing more input. So next up, I see Mitchell Fry has their hand up. Mitchell, we're going to go ahead, ask you to unmute.
Yeah.
Hi, Mitchell. I can hear you. Go ahead.
We're a group of us are here together logged in on Mitch's sign-in. But my impression about this slide is, if you want to know what my feelings are,
Sir, I'm so sorry, but we're gonna need you to like stay close to the microphone. It's turning it off. So the closer to your computer you could be, the better. Thank you.
hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Yes.
Okay. My impression of the current event is that you're soliciting information on how I would like to see the monument designated or managed. And that's what I would like to provide now. So most of Gold Butte that is not designated wilderness qualifies as lands with wilderness characteristics, which is a formal designation. I would like to see Gold Butte stay more or less the way it is today. And I think the best way to do that is to maintain the road system in a way that protects the lands with wilderness characteristics. This would also include things like limiting the visibility of infrastructure, such as formal campgrounds. I see the area managed for dark skies, and manage human use by encouraging travel on durable surfaces in such ways as establishing designated hiking trails that are open only to foot travel. Of course, that's humans and equestrian and whatever other feet, but not vehicles. So actually has some separate designated trails that presumably would go and concentrate use in certain places. But in general, I like to see Gold Butte stay more or less just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. Sorry for the technical difficulty there with the microphone. So next up, Christian Gerlach. Christian, we're going to go ahead and ask you to, whoops, your hand just went down. Oh, no, there you're back. Christian, do you want to go ahead and raise your hand? I do not know what's going on there. There we go. Hi, you're back live.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Penner. Christian Gerlach, I just wanted to once again thank the Bureau of Land Management for putting these management hearings together. I had additional comments to expand upon from earlier, requesting that the Bureau of Land Management, where possible, redirect high-impact recreational activities away from the most sensitive of cultural resources with appropriate signage, appropriate barriers to avoid future or additional incursions to areas that are not part of the existing roadway structure. Where possible, directing folks to camping areas that are away from very sensitive cultural locations, and potentially looking at the most minimal possible, least intrusive infrastructure that would assist folks in moving to certain areas, things like some sort of small trash receptacles, so long as that they're actually collected on a regular basis. Things like not necessarily formal designated camping areas, but perhaps fire rings, something that can contain people's activities to be as least impactful as possible. I remember on a specific trip taking volunteers out there in terms of road signage. I actually got lost one time in the mud wash area. Fortunately was able to eventually find my way, but there's definitely a significant need for additional signage. And again, appreciate the Bureau of Land Management's opportunity and just urge them to work as collaboratively as possible with Nevada State Historic Preservation Office, stewardship projects, and organizations like Friends of Gold Butte and others. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for your additional input, Christian. So it looks like we have another hand up, Ryan Bundy. Ryan, we're going to ask you to unmute, and then you're going to be able to talk. Good evening, Ryan. Whoop, I'm not quite unmuted yet.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Go ahead. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So first of all, I'd like to let you know that I am the son of Cliven Bundy, and we have the grazing rights upon that area. And we understand that this monument's there and kind of on top of our ranch, and we understand that. I do appreciate you honoring and respecting our rights to graze cattle there, as well as our water rights and grazing rights, which are filed with the state of Nevada, and I appreciate that. Was some comments concerning, not hitting the cattle and maybe having some signage up there. Over there on State Route 170, there are signage that lets people know that there's cattle, but along that Gold Butte Road, there is no signage there. And perhaps that would be a good thing because as it is designated open range, there are liabilities to drivers who hit cows, and it's good if they're aware that there are cattle there. We haven't really had any incidences where cattle are hit on the Gold Butte Road very often, but I guess it could happen. Anyway, so I do want to let people know that as ranchers there, we've been there historically since 1877. My ancestors have been there a long time, and we do care and want to preserve the historical value of the petroglyphs and other things that are there. We care a lot about those things. We always have, and we want to make sure that they're preserved, and we appreciate everybody who hold them in high regard and protects them. We don't ever encourage. In fact, it hurts our hearts when people do harm and so forth to things around. So we appreciate people who want to protect those things. And we do have infrastructure. We have had a lot of vandalism, which is disheartening to us and causes us lots of grief.
Ryan, I apologize. You've reached the end of the 2 minutes, but you know what? If you will go ahead and we'll just go back. I bet if you raise your hand again, you'll get right back up. Trying to be fair to everyone else to try and limit everyone for 2 minutes. So again, encourage anyone to raise their hands and they can come back up. We have, I see Josh has raised his hand. We have just about, 15 to 20 minutes or so left in order for folks to provide input and encourage anyone to go ahead. Great. I see you got your hand back up, Ryan. Josh, we're going to go to you first, then Mitchell, then Ryan.
Thank you again, Phil. Hey, Ryan, this is kind of to you and the BLM. This whole orchestration of the public meeting is really just a shitty attempt, to be NEPA compliant after.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to go on to Mitchell. Mitchell, you're up next. Mitchell, I know you're in a room with a number of people, so hopefully just anyone who's there, just stand close to the microphone.
This is Jim Boone coming back. Can you hear me now?
I can. Good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hey, a couple of questions came up last time. Actually, some accusations and some questions. And I thought I might take a couple minutes, and if those people are listening, to address some of that. One deals with the road system, and I generally support the 2008 travel management plan. It's been in place for a long time. The roads that were closed under the plan that was done through a process just like we're doing tonight with community input. But recently there was accusations of the BLM closing roads out there. And well, the BLM or Friends of Gold Butte closing roads out there. And we've talked about that. And the only thing we can think of that this gentleman might have been referring to is efforts to close off illegal road incursions down around Black Butte Dam where people drive around the barricades and go up to the 21 Goats panel. And so we think that if he's complaining about the roads being closed, it's those illegal incursions that we've been working to cut off repeatedly over the years. But all of that's based on a plan that was put in place in 2008. Another issue of signs and getting lost in Gold Butte came up. There are now lots of signs in Gold Butte that were paid for by a grant from the OHV Commission and implemented by the Friends of Gold Butte with help from BLM. So when people are out and about in the monument, there are lots of directional signs, and hopefully people won't get lost as often as they used to. Thank you. I'll talk to you a little bit later.
Excellent. And I just want to go ahead and thank you, Jim, and actually everyone for their participation and their input this evening. And just remind everyone, again, we have just about 15 minutes left. I see Ryan's hand is up next. So Ryan, we're going to ask you to unmute and welcome back. Hopefully you can go ahead and finish with your input there that were interrupted before. Good evening, Ryan.
Yes, so I left off talking about some vandalism that has been taking place several times and instances. Our water infrastructure has been vandalized and cut water lines and so forth. Anyway, that's not right, and quite frankly, it's criminal. And we have had the county sheriff involved with trying to figure out who has been doing that. We just ask that there be courtesy to recognize our rights in the area and not to do that, where we encourage and try to be friendly to everybody who come. We welcome everybody who comes to our ranch, and we just expect the same courtesy as well. And on that note, that Black Butte Dam was just mentioned. Never heard it called Black Butte Dam before, but I know what you're talking about. That's actually considered what we call Hartman Tank. And Hartman Tank, we actually own that. That's our dam. That belongs to us. It belongs to our ranch. That's registered with the State Nevada Division of Water Rights. And anyways, and it's in need of some maintenance, which we will perform at one point. But anyway, once again, I just want people to know that we love and care for this land as well. And we thank all those who love and care for it, and welcome to be partners with it on it. We work together to make things nice, and we would love to be a part of that, which we are on our ranch. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate everyone's input. I see that we're going to go ahead. We'll lower your hand, and then we'll go on to Jim, who is actually there under Mitchell's name. Jim, we're going to go ahead and unmute you again, and you'll be back up.
Thank you. Jim Boone back again.
Good.
So again, in relation to the 2008 travel management plan, I would hope that we keep that just the way it is and not add new routes. And a suggestion was made last time about adding new routes so that people could drive loops. And I would like to point out to those folks, if they're listening tonight, that there are tons of fantastic loop driving adventures out there. For example, if they're not aware, people can ride down Fisherman's Cove Road and loop back up Sand Wash into Whitney Pocket. It's a wonderful loop. Or they can go down Fisherman's Cove Road again and loop back up Mud Wash Road and back to Whitney Pocket. Or they can ride down Fisherman's Cove Road and loop back up Red Bluff Spring Road into the Gold Butte town site and then back to Whitney Pocket. Or they can ride down Fisherman's Cove Road and loop back up past Gold Butte town site into Cedar Basin and come back out over Micah Peak and then back to Whitney Pocket. Lots of other things. You can ride out towards Cocoon Springs and make some nice loops out in that direction and come back into Gold Butte. Well, there already are lots of them. But one point that I'd like to make is if the folks that were asking the questions earlier are interested, get a hold of Friends of Gold Butte, and we can get together in the office here in Mesquite and look at some maps and actually point out some of these really, really astounding loop drives out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And more generally, just the BLM really, I know, wants to express their appreciation for the great input that they're receiving tonight and the level of specificity. That was just fantastic. So Robert Andrews, looks like you have your hand up next. And I'm going to remind everyone we have 10 minutes left until we go ahead and go to the last slide and kind of get more details again about how to provide further input. So Robert, we're going to ask you to unmute and then you'll be ready to go ahead and provide input. Good evening.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to comment on some of the earlier callers that were insinuating that it was maybe verboten to talk about cattle grazing as you go through the question and answer series where you commented that this session was not about question and answers. You could only ask questions and they'd be addressed personally by email. But during the question and answer series where it was actually allowed, every question about cattle management and cattle ranching and cattle on that land was skipped by. So if everyone goes through those questions, they answered literally every single question besides a few that were kind of maybe inflammatory or something like that. They didn't answer a few of those, but every question they skipped by if it regarded cattle. And so I believe it's a little bit, Mr. Perner, a little bit disingenuous of you to insinuate that what you're saying about that. And so if you guys want to say that, if you skip by those questions, then you can't stand by the fact. If you don't want to answer those, if you don't want them to come up, and if you skip by those questions intentionally, then you kind of have no standing on that. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thanks for your input. Let's go ahead and remind everyone, again, we have just about 7 minutes left. Anyone can raise their hand at this point and go ahead and provide input. And as we're waiting, let's just really quickly hop to that last slide and I'll remind folks there we go. Perfect. So again, if there's things that you've thought about here, want to provide further input or actually a further question if you'd like, you can go to the project website and find more information about how to do that. Or you can go ahead and send an email to the BLM_NV_LVFO_Gold Butte@blm.gov. Or you can mail the BLM at the Las Vegas field office and with the attention line described here. Again, reminding everyone, has to be received by March 3rd, 2022. And with that, the reason why it has to be received by March 3rd, 2022, so it can be considered in this early planning process. So we can go back to the next slide, the previous one, I guess, Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and we'll wait and continue to keep this open for folks to provide verbal input. About 6 minutes remaining now. And for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and while we wait for anyone else who wants to raise their hand, who has further input, I'm going to go ahead and grab another drink. Okay, again, I'll remind everyone, we've got about another 5 minutes before we go ahead and close out with more information about how you can provide input. And also Shauna going ahead and actually giving us the goodbyes. But I do see that Robert has his hand back up. Robert, we're going to ask you to unmute. Robert, welcome back. Go ahead, you're live.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to ask, since there's a few minutes left, and since you guys refused to answer some of the questions during the question and answer series, since there's 4 minutes left, if you would take this time to answer some of the questions in the question and answer series regarding cattle management.
Robert, I think you might know what my answer is actually going to be to that. This hour is basically dedicated to verbal input, not a back and forth between the BLM and the public here. We had that opportunity a little bit earlier. I recognize I'd encourage you to go ahead and provide further input on this matter, actually by those two means. And maybe with that, we can go ahead and hop back over to that slide. Perfect. Again, you'll see this slide maybe several more times before we go ahead and close out. You can email BLM_NV_LVFO@goldbutte@blm.gov, or mail to the BLM Las Vegas field office. Attention, Gold Butte National Monument implementation plan and EA, or you can just do IP and EA. Again, encouraging everyone to go ahead and submit that information by March 3rd. So we can go back to the previous slide now. Excellent. So it looks like we've got a couple other folks. We've got Christian in the queue, and then Robert's back up. So Christian, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to unmute.
While waiting here and thinking upon further bits of input, I again just thank the Bureau of Land Management for hosting these. Hope that they will again consider additional virtual meetings that specifically target underserved constituencies and communities of Clark County and Southern Nevada and the broader region, including St. George. There's ample opportunity to work with different populations that enjoy our public lands but don't necessarily know about these meetings. But my comment came as I was sparked to inspiration seeing a picture of some of the native flora and fauna out there about some sort of robust restoration projects that could be done in conjunction with Nevada Department of Wildlife, several different local horticulture collectives, including the UNLV's cooperative extensions, and just members of the public, and also school community gardens. There is quite a bit of robust community gardens that take place at local public schools. It would behoove the Bureau of Land Management, I think, to help with their outreach education efforts, to work with some of these community gardens to raise native plants, collect seeds, and help replenish some of the areas within Gold Butte that have seen over the past few decades wildfires, have seen other degradation of the rangelands. And we could really beautify the local landscape within Gold Butte, and as much as also engage the public who love this landscape to actually help maintain it, restore certain parts of it that have seen wildfires or have seen other forms of degradation. So just appreciate the opportunity to comment again. Thank you for hosting these meetings.
Christian, thank you for your input, and I'm glad that that picture of the native fauna, actually flora, excuse me, actually inspired you so much. So we appreciate that. And that basically closes us out. We're just a bit early here, 1 minute early away from when we thought we were going to switch to this slide for the last moment. But with that, Allie, I'm going to ask you to come back on, and I'm going to hand it off to you, and then
Great, thanks, William. I'm just going to echo a lot of what he just went over. The information gathering period for the Gold Butte National Monument implementation plan, again, extends until March 3rd. We will be accepting input at any time throughout the process. However, that input submitted by March 3rd is most helpful in the development of the proposed action. So we thank you for your participation. If you wish to provide any further input, you may use the following methods. They're available on the screen now, and they are also available in the chat. That's going to be the email, which is blm_nv_lvfo_goldbutte@blm.gov. The mailing address, which is the BLM Las Vegas Field Office, attention, Gold Butte National Monument Implementation Plan and Environmental Assessment, 4701 North Torrey Pines Drive, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89130. And that virtualpublicmeeting.com/gold-butte-national-monument-EA. Those are all areas that you can provide further input. So please feel free to use those if you have any further input. And with that, I'll turn it over to Shauna for our closing remarks.
Thank you, Allie. And thank you everyone that joined us tonight and spent your evening with us to talk about Gold Butte National Monument. We did hear a lot of great input and we have a lot of ideas to consider in the plan. And please continue to send us input in the ways Allie just described. I also wanted to say there will be probably more public meetings as we go through the environmental analysis section of this plan. So those would be coming up later after we continue working on this. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a great evening.